Hello. So today we are going to be talking about the spiritual significance of the number six. So this is not a all-out discussion on six, but this is just the basics of what I understand, and I would love for us to collect knowledge together. So you share what you feel like you understand about six, and we can talk about it together. But first, I want to talk about six as the charity number, as we really know it in the tarot with the Six of Pentacles. I'm thinking of specifically, but there is this aspect of sharing when it comes to the number six. The interesting thing about it is that if you do not have the discernment and the boundaries in place to understand when it is right to give and when it is right to keep for yourself, six can leave you in a spirit of desolation, which is why it comes right after five, because you're not too far from slipping back into a spirit of lack. And if you are too hoarding of your wealth, it can slip you right into seven, which in certain aspects can be you can put yourself in a position where you have a lot to defend, and it can be stressful, and it can lead you to do things that maybe you shouldn't do. It can also lead you to take from people because you are feeling like you don't have enough, usually to defend what you already have. Six is a really interesting number. It calls for the village. It begins to speak about the village. At the point of six, we have a whole collection of numbers that we can speak to, that we can connect to, but also six begins to understand that, oh wow, we live in a system, that there are these structures and hierarchies, and the people at the bottom, okay, people need help. People need leadership in the sense of success stories, and people need help in terms of those who can give. With six, we begin to see the humanitarian form out of the number three as well. With the number nine is where the humanitarian really comes into existence, but the number six begins that with the energy of philanthropy. So six is also a number of the organizations. So not the organizer as the three would be, but the organization. Now you have the non-for-profits. Now you have what are NGOs? Now you have those. Now the six is like the board of directors. If six was an inheritor of wealth, the six would be the person who's, given a lot of their wealth away to charities, putting things in their name, naming libraries after them, naming schools after them, because they really helped fund these things. But you're also getting something in exchange. Six is the wealthy person that donates a lot, but also gets to write it off on their taxes when you're in balance. These things can be great. It can be a great relationship that really speaks to systems of hierarchy, systems where there are established ranks of power. Six can be helpful in making sure that the lower class and the people who are at the bottom don't fall too far behind and are not forgotten to the point of like pure enslavement and where all humanity is lost. Six kind of is that bridge that makes sure that humanity still exists. Once power systems really begin to form and structures really begin to form, six is the number of rules and regulations and bounds that make sure, okay, you know what? Yes, we need to succeed and progress in the way that, five is like, we need to succeed and progress at all costs. Six is like, okay, yeah, you do want to do these things, and I recognize the importance of this. Six is kind of the friend to all, and kind of also the checks and balances, kind of like the United Nations. But we'll get to the complicated aspects of it. But six is like, okay, you can do this, but let me pass this law to make sure that these people are protected. But six is also sometimes willing to turn a little bit of a blind eye to the idea that, wait a minute, why are we funding institutions? Why are we funding systems that profit off of and benefit off of, the exploitation of the lower class at all. Six is like, well, look, I can only do what is I can only deal with what's happening in the present. I can only help what I am aware of, and with what I am what's put right in front of me. Six isn't always trying to solve the problem of poverty, but six will go to the homeless shelters and give out food, and will go and create a charity that helps kids who are struggling to get education, help them get their education. Are they solving the root problem of why people have education and why others don't? No, but they're creating little support systems. That's what six does. It creates not band-aids, it advances medicine. Six is also speaking to the Virgo. Six is a healer in many senses. It advances medicine. It advances ethics. It advances different unions, things that support people, things that bring people together, and make sure that people aren't left to the wayside, things that pick the person who's falling behind up and says, okay, here, let's figure out how we can get you a position. Six is probably, the energy that fights to raise minimum wage. They're not necessarily trying to get rid of the minimum wage jobs or the idea of minimum wage, but they are going to try and help to raise it. They are going to try and get labor protections. They're not shutting down factories, but they will get protections in factories. These things, they are the ones that are coming up with sustainability laws. They're trying to work with the system because they understand that the system has a point, and they've got a bigger perspective that can be flawed, but they have a bigger perspective that, this is the way that things go, this is the way that things function, but if there's something I can do to help people who are suffering because this is the way that things panned out, then I'm going to try and help them. Six is a disruptor in the sense that when two energies come together into union, as we see in the tarot with the Lovers and the Tower, we see an energy of six coming in as a disruptor and a shift to individualism. We're no longer focused on, well, what does this do for me? Well, how can I get ahead? The same way that we kind of see in other numbers. Six is like, no, we must think about unity. We must consider each other. We must begin to think about how this reflects upon all of us. And if it does not reflect great upon all of us, if it does not reflect great on the society that we're building, the world that we're building, that world needs to change. And it can be as simple as somebody coming into your life and showing you that life is worth living alongside them rather than on your own. That's what the number six is. It says, you know what, you should share your life. Keeping your life all to yourself, there's a better way. The Tower does the same thing. Six comes in with the number one as well and says, you know what, this existence that's been happening forever that we consider to just be foundational and just be the truth, well, I think that there's a better way. We're seeing that things are missing here. We're seeing that things are going wrong here. There's a gap in understanding, and we need to address that. And in order to do that, we need to tear down the system. So six, in many ways, is also the dismantler of systems in the same way that they can be like a part of the system, but a more charitable function, like the United Nations or like non-for-profits, but they're still complicated, have these complicated histories. Six can also be what dismantles a system, though six isn't dismantling it in the way that number eight might be, where it's completely transformed altogether. Six might say, okay, mental health institutions, for example. Six might say, you know what? Asylums are wrong. That's the wrong take on mental health. That's the wrong take on institutions for mental health. Let's change this. So six is dismantling one idea of this thing that exists in our society, this pillar that exists, but it's not destroying the thing altogether. The Tower is knocking down the tower, but it's not an earthquake uprooting the earth that the tower is built upon. It's just knocking down the tower and building something new in its place, probably something that still exists within the understanding of having a function. So six does the same thing. It's not uprooting the earth and making it so that there's nothing there and like getting rid of all of existence, it still embodies the energy of one, in the sense that we are creating something, we are having a form, we are holding a space. We just want to shift what that space is now about, or how that space is defined, because we've learned our lessons, we've seen what's happened, and we're like, oh, we're looking at 5, we're looking at the suffering of people, we're looking at 4, we're looking at the power heads and what they're doing, we're looking at 3 and the organizers, what the grassroots people are saying, and we're saying, oh, okay, there's these needs, there's these causes, I've got enough to share, let me go ahead and make a change where I can. 6 might not be the one that is redesigning the mental health institutions, but they will fund the people, they will fund the research of the people who are going to do that. 6 is not afraid to engage with the ghosts and the demons of our past. 6 says, you know what, especially if they are in positions of privilege, which in some way or shape or another, we all kind of have our privileges. Some people might not consider them privileges. But 6 says, we have to recognize what got us here. We have to talk about it. We have to not be afraid to deal with it. 6 isn't afraid to talk about the karma. 6 isn't afraid to go into the dark history, the darker aspects of history, the secrets. 6 is the one that says this doesn't need to be kept hidden. 6 is the one that suggests that maybe we begin to speak about rehabilitation, reconciliation, therapy, things that help get things out into the open. 6 says, let's bring it out from the closet, let's bring it out from under the covers into the open, and let's look at things. 6 is something that wants to acknowledge life in all of its forms and sit with it and be very empathetic to it. 6 is very nurturing in that way, and very much so non-judgmental, just understanding that all of these things are aspects of life, and just trying to see what we can do to build towards a stronger future where these supports aren't always needed in such a heavily involved way. Ultimately, 6 is trying to get us out of such a reliance on the system, but they're not necessarily in the place where it's like we are going to be the ones that do that altogether. So let's just now create the supports to help people get on their feet so that they can get into a position of power where they can begin to think about solutions. But right now they just need to survive, So 6 is like, how do we help people survive, thrive, and eventually create new systems? So 6 is an activist in that way, an organizer in that way, very much so connected to the number 3 and the predecessor of the number 9. 369 is a very powerful number pattern, as I'm sure you know, with the idea of cycles and all of these things. So 6 is a very beautiful number. It's a privileged experience in the number 6 because you really do have a wide range of perspective. You're actually quite balanced. Some might see you and look at your privilege, but I think people ultimately end up having a better view of you because of what you do with that power. 6 is someone who tends to succeed, and not necessarily easily, though it might look easy. Sometimes 6 could deal with imposter syndrome in terms of feeling like they are deserving of whatever success that they have, or feeling like the work that they do is good enough. If you are an inheritor of wealth or gifts or traits, you can sometimes struggle to feel like that's your own. 6 can be like the part of the person in the family that wants to set out a place for themselves, doesn't maybe want to just benefit from the family wealth and not do anything with it, wants to try and help. If the family has a murky legacy because of the sacrifices that 5 made, 6 is like, okay, well, how can I repair that? I don't want everyone to be perceived as the bad guy. 6 makes us complicate, our statements about the rich and about the wealthy and about the powerful when we see those people who are in those positions who end up doing really good things. It makes us complicate our understandings of psychology and human psychology and what makes a good person and all these things. 6 helps us complicate the conversation and ultimately bring a lot more humanity in. And we see that again with its connection to 3 and 9. 6 again goes outward, whereas 5 goes inward. 6 goes outward, begins to engage with the larger landscape of the world, create big organizations, big pillars that help. Libraries, 6 comes from 6. Libraries are a space where homeless people can be. People can get free access to all these things. It's warmth, it's shelter, it's knowledge, it's so many things all in one. It's something that a 6, answers so many different calls. 6 tries to answer many things, give in many ways, create stable things that, people can hold on to until the next generation of evolution, systemic evolution occurs. 6, is the balance, is the bridge between that to help the lower half survive and rise up. 6 ultimately has a nature that desires for an uprising, but isn't necessarily going to say that outright. Maybe because 6 also does have an understanding of time and place and understands that they are not in the distant future, whereas 5 is dreaming of a very, very long ahead future. 6 is like, well, we're in the present, and what do we need right now? I know that the future is going to happen, and I know that these people, if they've got the tools that they need, they can create that future that we all dream of, but they need these basic things right now. We've got to answer these problems that the people are facing today. So 6 is like, let's deal with that. And the problems for the future will be on the people of the future, but let's give them the help they need. So 6 it's a beautiful number. It's got its ups, it's got its downs. It's also the devil with the 5 and the 1. So you can see how 6 can become unbalanced in terms of corrupt charities, using charity just to get financial gains, using that as an excuse to make yourself feel better and not actually doing any work. It can be considered just the busy work of rich, people who have nothing to do. Board of directors can also sometimes be complicated. So 6 has its negative aspects, but it ultimately ends up kind of being overwhelmingly positive, similar to 5. Though 5 is not overwhelmingly positive in reputation, 6 is. Think about Virgos versus Sagittarius, for example. Sagittarius being 5, Virgo being 6. Virgos have their things, they're perfectionists, they're critical, blah, blah, but ultimately they're hardworking. Ultimately they're healers. I mean, Beyonce's a Virgo, right? Look at Sagittarius. Can be considered snarky, can not really be considered non-committal. Nicki Minaj is a Sagittarius, really complicated reputation, yet Sagittariuses are also like the spiritual teachers. They're very interesting energies, just like 5. They really do understand the future, and they do understand emotions in a reflective way. It's just not really the way that we all want them to sometimes, but they are deeply engaged people with humanity. They do want deeply for humanity, the same way 6s do. 6 is just an evolved state. It reaches into the future, and then it comes back here to the present, and it's like, oh, okay, well, even though I have these dreams and these desires for the future, I see that there are needs around me, and I'm going to put some things aside around what I would love and what I would love to dream and hope and wish about, and I'm just going to do what I can now, here and now, versus, their sibling of 5 who, well, they're actually their ancestor of 5 who's like, I'm doing something for way ahead. So very, very interesting. Let me know what you think of the number 6, the spiritual significance, the spiritual meaning of the number 6. And spirituality is everything. So whatever you have to say, I would consider it valid. And I'm very interested to collect all this knowledge. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think about what I said. If you have any challenges to it, I don't really know if there's a wrong answer. Okay, bye.